Stories months in the making come to a head this week. Arguably the most important election in Texas arrives. Will the Attorney General get his revenge?
This part is political. It's elections, and we all have a right to support the people that we think will best represent the state of Texas.
Do the votes change for the governor's education plan?
Empowering parents with a God-given right to choose the school that's best for their child.
And does the Speaker of the House go down against his main rival? Plus, who will face Senator Ted Cruz in November?
I think the Senate is broken.
And late this week, a Texan aims for a power position in Washington. The stakes right now on Lone Star Politics.
This is Lone Star Politics from NBC5 and the Dallas Morning News.
Good Sunday morning. I'm Phil Prazan from NBC5.
And I'm Gromer Jeffers, political writer with the Dallas Morning News. And Phil, we're now less than 48 hours from Election Day. And remember, you have so much more to vote for besides the presidential race.
According to the Secretary of State, nearly 18 million Texans registered to vote. They'll decide several high-stakes races, including 3 open North Texas seats for Congress. Republican Representatives Michael Burgess of Louisville and Kay Granger of Fort Worth are retiring, and Congressman Colin Allred of Dallas is running for the U.S. Senate. Let's start there. Dallas Congressman Colin Allred and State Senator Roland Gutierrez of San Antonio topped the list of 9 Democrats vying for a chance to face U.S. Senator Ted Cruz in November. Recently, Allred has been more critical of the Biden administration over immigration, signing onto a resolution condemning his handling of the migrant crisis. He also supports building some parts of the border wall, along with a plan for comprehensive immigration reform. That has brought some harsh criticism from Gutierrez, who has his own plan for a work program and a country of origin program.
My opponent's idea of addressing it is agreeing with the Republicans, saying we need to build a border wall. Nonsense. He said that on October 6th. Nonsense. Colin Allred's idea is holding hands with extremist Republicans saying, oh, Joe Biden, you're an open borders president. That's just not true.
We've had this crisis in Texas for some time. And so for us, it would have been better if we had been responding and been more front foot for both the administration side and I think from our party side, talking about that we have an actual solution for this, one that will help us secure the border and that we can do it in a humane way.
Here's something that may explain that movement from Allred. According to a mid-February poll from the Texas Politics Project, Democrats are beginning to look at the border as a more serious issue. 20% saying the number of migrants crossing the border is a crisis, 37% saying it's a very serious problem but not a crisis, 27% saying it's a somewhat serious problem, only 12% saying it's not much of a problem at all. Gromer, that shifted to a more of it's a problem side.
Right.
Is that why we're seeing this from Congressman Allred?
Oh, exactly. He realizes, just like an increasing number of Democrats realize, that border security is an important issue, not just to base Republican voters, but independents and Democrats as well. And so he has to move or project that he's looking for solutions, and even if that means being critical of President Joe Biden.
And it's kind of pivoting him towards the middle, all right?
Yeah, which could help in a race against Ted Cruz, the Republican incumbent, where that middle and independence will be very important, particularly if Cruz can rally most conservatives behind him and Allred can get the Democratic and the progressive base behind him, assuming that Allred is the nominee.
Well, I think that's an important thing to talk about. There has been a lot of chatter recently of whether Congressman Allred can win without a runoff. What do you think?
Well, the polls show that he's in striking distance, right? Recent polls. One poll, I think it was the Texas Politics Project poll at UT Austin, had him at 52%. And as you know, they kind of nudged independents a little bit in that one. Others have had him in the 40s. So we'll see. He's the only one, Phil, on television, major networks, communicating with voters. Mm-hmm. That's a big advantage when you think about it. No one else is able to get that message to a broad swath of voters. They're doing it by shoe leather reporters showing up at rubber chicken dinners, mm-hmm. rallies, things like that. And so they have to hope that the sheer number of candidates in that race helps push it into a runoff. If it doesn't, Ulrich could walk away on election night as the winner outright.
So Senator Ted Cruz faces two lesser-known challengers in the primary, but he is already looking toward November.
I want to keep Texas, Texas, and I think that's what this election's about. If you want to have the policies that are working here in Texas, low taxes, reasonable regulations, lots of jobs, your family safe and secure, and your constitutional rights protected, every day that's what I fought to do, and every day that's what I'll continue doing.
Although not up for re-election, Governor Abbott has been very busy on the campaign trail, spending millions to support 10 primary challengers of anti-school choice voucher Republicans. The governor vowed to clean house after 21 largely rural Republicans voted with Democrats to kill his top priority. The governor needs 13 more votes to reach a 76-vote majority.
If you just look at the people who voted against school choice, who are vacating their seats, that's going to be a huge pickup there. So there's going to be some other incumbents who lose because of the vote. Remember this, and that is school choice is extraordinarily popular in all of these House districts. And those people are going to go vote in favor of the values they believe in, and that means they're going to be voting with the candidates I'm backing.
We make our own decisions about who we endorse. We're both independently elected. I represent the governor, I represent the legislature, I represent different agencies. However, this part is political, it's elections, and we all have a right to support the people that we think will best represent the state of Texas.
Maybe the most important race for the Texas House is down in southeast Texas. Speaker of the House Dade Phelan of Beaumont faces two challengers, with one of them, former Orange County Republican Chairman David Covey, landing the endorsement of former President Donald Trump. Now, much of this springs from the Texas House's impeachment of Paxton on bribery and abuse of power allegations. The Senate chose to keep Paxton in his job, but Paxton is a key ally of former President Donald Trump, who helped swing the endorsement against Speaker Phelan. The Speaker responded in a new television ad.
70% of House Republicans impeached him, and Paxton just admitted to the charges, no longer contesting the lawsuit. Vengeful Paxton is the reason Trump's involved himself in our race. If Paxton will break an oath to his wife and God, why would he tell Trump or you the truth?
But it is truly a pile-on down in Beaumont against the Speaker. In a very rare move, the Speaker's counterpart, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick from the Senate, is running ads against him as well. These two are close to hating each other after two very long, very divisive years in the Texas legislature.
Dade Phelan wants you to believe that he supports Donald Trump. Really? I've been the chair of the Trump campaign now for 3 elections in Texas, and I've never seen Dade at one Trump rally or event, and he's never offered to help. So why is Dade trying to fool you now? Because he knows he's in trouble with the voters.
Gromer, have you ever seen a lieutenant governor come into the primary race of a speaker?
No, I have not, at least not so outwardly. And you know, hate, and you mentioned close to hating each other. That may be an understatement in this case. But yeah, this is really fascinating because it's not just Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, it's the normal insurgent crowd that always takes on seemingly Republican House speakers these days. But Donald Trump, and you know, is involved in this race. And yet the speaker, if he's connected to his district, he's popular in Beaumont, if he's able to pull us out and win, think what that will signal, think what that will mean in terms of his political clout. It will free him, in a sense, to do what he wants to do in the legislature. And next session would be
either a bad mood or a terrible mood. I mean,
exactly.
It's interesting to see how many outside forces are in this one race, though.
It really is, and it's a microcosm of all the races, because you have these characters: Trump, Governor Abbott, Patrick, even Ted Cruz. Who's who of people endorsing in all of these House races. You know, House members have never been so popular, right? But here we are. Also about the Speaker, it'll be interesting, and I wonder how some of the members feel about him now post that vote to impeach.
Impeachment, yeah.
You know,
brought a lot of
Paxton.
flack to folks.
Yeah, he made them take a lot of tough votes, and I wonder what they feel about that now. And if a lot of them go down and he survives, will that impact him trying to hang on as Speaker when they vote in 2025?
But Gromer, an interesting turn happened in the last few weeks in this fight. Former governor and former U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry came out of retirement to campaign for a group of candidates, including House Speaker Dave Phelan. He's speaking across Texas in support of Republican leadership and letting some Democrats run committees in Austin. Here he is last week in Sulphur Springs.
You got to reach across the aisle from time to time. I had people, I'm pretty sure that every lieutenant governor in modern history has had some Democrat chairmen. And that's okay. Doesn't mean you're going to change your philosophy. Doesn't mean you're going to compromise your values. It just means that, you're going to be the chairman over there. If you come with some crazy stuff, it's not going to happen. But I want you over there because there's some things we can work on together.
Let's turn now to Denton County. They have several big races. What exactly are you watching in that county?
Well, a couple of things. One, the hotly contested race to replace Congressman Michael Burgess, the doctor who's represented that district since 2003. That's hotly contested, a lot of folks in that race. And I think it's driving turnout out there. You see a lot of people voting in early voting. So I'm watching that, and we'll see. Those congressional seats don't come open that often, so that will be interesting.
There's also a competitive Senate district, right? State Senate district, and then also 2 somewhat competitive Texas House races. There's just a lot going on. Why do you think there's so much attention in Denton County?
Well, Denton County is really a hotbed for conservatism, but it's all about how conservative you are, and that's a lot of times the fight out there. But these seats are coming open. There are a lot of challenges. If you want to check the mood of conservatives in Texas, Denton County is one of those counties you look at.
And now more than 1 million new voters in Texas this election compared to 4 years ago. That's that last presidential primary election. Still ahead, a closer look at how the state's growing population could impact this week's election. You're watching Lone Star Politics.
Texas has boomed since March 2020, when the last presidential primary happened. Since then, according to state and county election data, there have been 75,000 new voter registrations in Dallas County, and there are more than 100,000 new registered voters each in Collin, Denton, and Tarrant counties.
Let's bring in Derek Ryan, founder of Ryan Data and Research, which tracks Texas voting trends. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just start with compare what you're seeing in North Texas compared to Texas across the state. Are there any things that interest you?
Yeah, so I think that right now we're on track to see about 2 million people in the state vote in the Republican primary and about 1.5 million in the Democratic primary. And when you look at the Dallas, Tarrant, Collin, and Denton counties, they're going to make up about 20% of all of the votes that are cast in the entire states. And then on the Democratic side, you're going to have those 4 counties make up about a quarter of all of the votes that are cast.
So Derek, how do the turnout numbers compare to previous primaries? Are we up, the same, down?
Sure. So on the Democratic side, they're down, but when you're comparing apples to apples, and we look at the 2020 primary election, you have to remember that 4 years ago there was a contested presidential primary, which drove up turnout in the Democratic side. So it's down considerably compared to that election. But then you look at the Republican side, and we're actually probably exceeding the turnout from 2020, but still way below where it was in 2016 when the Republicans had their contested presidential primary.
And Derek, I looked at some of your data that you put out every day in early voting, and there seems to be roughly about 20%, maybe a little less than that, of people who aren't traditional Republican primary voters in Collin and Denton County. You know, they voted only in the general election, or they have no voting history at all. Is that different than what we've seen in the past?
You know, it's actually down a little bit so far. You know, that may change. You know, come Tuesday night, we may see an influx of non-primary voters voting. But you know, these are areas of the state that are booming, and that people are moving from other states, you know, to Texas, specifically to Collin and Denton counties. So you know, they may have voted in party primaries in another state, but this is the first you know, chance that they're getting to you know, vote in a Texas primary.
And Derek, in a few seconds we have left, are Republicans, because of what happened in Trump in 2020, are they conditioned to vote Election Day? Are we still seeing that trend? I know it's like that in 2022.
It's a great question. Yeah, I do think that there is a shift in you know, some previous Republican primary voters who voted by mail or voted early in the past who decided to wait until Tuesday to cast their votes.
All right, Derek Ryan, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Could a Texas senator be next in line for the top spot in Republican leadership? We take a closer look at what the exit of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell could mean for Senator John Cornyn and the state of Texas. Next on Lone Star Politics. On the heels of another near government shutdown, President Biden is preparing to address a joint session of Congress. You can watch the State of the Union address live Thursday night at 7 here on NBC5 and online at NBCDFW.com. A North Texas mother who made national headlines and forced the state's new abortion law to go before the Supreme Court is expected to attend the State of the Union address. Kate Cox will be the guest of First Lady Dr. Jill Biden.
We also expect to see Carla Gates, the widow of North Texas postal carrier Eugene Gates. Eugene Gates passed away while delivering mail during extreme heat last June. Since then, Carla Gates has been an advocate for improved worker protections at the U.S. Postal Service.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is stepping down, which opens the door to Texas senior Senator John Cornyn. Less than 24 hours after the announcement, Cornyn announced he's running for the job that he's been eyeing for years.
I think the Senate is broken, and it really hasn't been functioning as the world's greatest deliberative body, which historically people have thought of it that way. And we need to get the Senate working again.
McConnell is the longest-serving leader in Senate history. The now 82-year-old has held the position since 2007. McConnell said he will leave his leadership position in November, but will serve out the rest of his term, which ends in January of 2027. Senator Cornyn called McConnell pragmatic, knowledgeable, humble, and effective, adding that he is grateful for his dedicated service to our country and this institution. An election to replace McConnell will happen in November, with his successor taking office in January. Gromer, this could be huge for Texas if John Cornyn gets it.
A very big deal, because if he does become, you know, the leader, Republican leader in the Senate, there's a chance that he could one day be Senate Majority Leader. And that is a big deal. He'll be on the cutting edge of everything, one of the most powerful figures in the country. You know, he can try to match LBJ, the master of the Senate. He can be his own version of that.
Yeah,
so,
Texas is already a huge deal in Republican politics, but this we would, you know, be at the seat at the front of the table.
Exactly,
On a lot of things.
because he'll have his hands on every major piece of legislation out there.
Something to watch. That's all the time we have. And join us Tuesday on air, online, and on our streaming channels for Super Tuesday election coverage.
And then we'll see you back here next Sunday for more Lone Star Politics.